In this session, Jeff was tasked in examining the location of the square shape photographed by a NASA satellite on Mars. Photographs of sites resembling monuments have been floating around for years, including pyramids and structures, and even items on ground which look a bone and a device. Such photographs aren't kept secret, but without telling NASA the exact identifier of the photo, they won't provide the public with it. Therefore, it's not kept secret but also not disclosed at the same time. First, Jeff was instructed to look at the target blind, without knowing anything about what he was looking at. That way he would be unbiased and have no expectation, keeping the findings objective.
I can see old columns. The climate is hot and dry. The columns are fluted. It looks like a front porch, a building, maybe a temple. The land is so flat, desert. There's some sort of water transport there. A pipe or an aqueduct, maybe a well too. There's a road. A smooth area, and quadrupeds or wheels too. If it's a temple, then why do I see pipe? Why are there quadrupeds?
We should remind you there's no known timeline in this case, since we didn't know almost anything about the location, hoping the information gleaned would help us reconstruct one. After getting some features to help us define the nature of the place and its purpose, Jeff moved on to actually draw the directions in the road in relation to the square compound.
There are lights on the corners of it, like beacons. The square is built on top of a flat mound. Lights or fires. It's funny, I got like a road, then a larger area to it. Is that a path or a road? Where is that damned pipe? Wheels and quadrupeds. In desert, could these be camels? There's a steep decline. At some point the water is coming out. I have a feeling the water is transported for vegetation. So, I have a flat surface, and then I've got it 4 points something sticking up, columns, and on top of that light source, something that emitted light. I can't tell if there was a roof on top of this.
Looking at the satellite image, the corners are still heightened.
Underneath this building I've got a channel pipe, and I was looking at it, and at some point it came to a sloped area, and I'm looking at the picture. Small rivulets coming down at a spot where it opens up. There's a little peak off to the right of the image, and between the peak and the square there's an exit of the tube. There are actually emissions right now, at present time. There's a lake of a depressed area where the sand is different. I mean, everything is screaming emissions. My thoughts are that's where the tunnel collapsed and it's coming out to the surface.
Now Jeff was instructed to focus on the emissions composition.
Bitter, so alkaline. Why is it so reactive? You've got a simple O, and as it gets closer to the source it's picking up calcium salt, and there's a reactive part to it too. I'm trying to see if there's volcanic aspect to this. This is driving me nuts, whatever this structure here is. It's bitter and it's picking salts and it's got reactive elements to it too. Almost feels like picking surface water. So there's geoactive water. Then you'd have very much like the Yellowstone effect with minerals, unless the steam comes up and it's cold and water is being precipitated out to rocky area and leaching out of the rocks, not because water is being carried but because steam is being carried, so that's why it's not geominerals. It's got more like volcanic attributes. It'd be more like what Yellowstone smells like. There are 2 impact craters. The question is, what is artificial there and what is natural? To construct a timeline, I can go back and look at same thing a long time ago. Now I see there's water, surrounded by 3 sides. One side is fairly tall, so what I'm looking at is this thing, in the crater. Salty sea kinda, and the crater. So one time you had water inside this impact crater inside the impact crater. So this wall was sitting on water and there was water being transported. Multiple areas because it's kinda curves around, and I don't think that salty water was good because had so many chemicals, while this stuff is better. In the square area there are tiles, or concrete, then you got a bunch of shit on top of it, also blow-throughs. For some reason there's points in the structure where there's emissions or something came through that left deposits, and I don't know if that's volcanic. There's a lot to look at the picture. Oh, those squares. So you can see the inner crater, and it has a build-up. It sits inside an impact crater. Maybe they were tapping the energy, a geothermic power plant, and that would explain not only where they got power but also water. That gives access to steam. They do that in some locations on Earth. They have a natural geothermal vent that they have capped and they're using it for power, like on Stanner-Rose, sitting on a very active fault line, and that thing is actively rolling as we speak. The emissions could have started after the thing got buried. It's hard to follow the geological timeline and pinpoint where the infrastructure put there on it.
Next, Jeff was tasked again, blind, in looking for the purpose of the structure. This time he got persons who seemed to have had sovereignty or influence in the place or culture.
There are people there, building, power, plants, water, mountains, motion. It's building momentum towards something. There's a group involved, and an individual. The figure wants to impress. The subject is older than 39, could be up to 50, wears funky shoes, like tennis shoes, wearing a hoodie. It's not a sports event, there's a lot of damage on him, so this is just some guy. The group agrees in principle, but they aren't cohesive. So you got a bunch of people with different aspects all tied in, almost feels like a NATO. A bunch of different groups all under one heading and nobody likes each other. It's funny, the disharmony there is just amazing.
Jeff's emotional reading is in line with some sources telling of Mars as a very war-faring society. No wonder Mars was destroyed. Scientists found evidence for Xenon-129 on Mars, which indicates nuclear bombs going off. At this point, more viewers joined in and contributed info, mostly corroborating Jeff's. They reported similarly matching surrounding nature, lush green, a Jungli-type vegetation, which one viewer described as having almost snake-like motility. Water on a plain. And a waterfall. The structure is carved out of existing mountain and natural materials. The people are dispersed in the area, not clustered together. One reported it looks like a mausoleum carved out of a mountain. The opening is about 7 feet tall. The air is breathable to humans. This project could serve the pedagogical purpose of teaching us how an unfeedbackable target with a timeline stretching perhaps millions of years can pose a special challenge to remote view. We will leave the findings without any conclusions and wait for more data for comparison.